Welcome back to another Kray video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos. And for people really into the Krays, join our private Facebook group, Krays Crime Lords of London, where you will find stuff probably unavailable anywhere else. We're an established group with a large membership, and best of all, we're friendly. The link is in the YouTube description section.
Hello, my name is Norman Lucas. I am a British crime journalist and author, known for my work covering high-profile criminal cases and gangland figures. I worked as a crime correspondent for the Sunday Mirror newspaper and wrote several books on true crime subjects. As a crime reporter for the Sunday Mirror, I covered significant crime stories in Britain. I had cultivated sources and contacts within the criminal underworld. Undercover, I worked my way into the inner circle of the notorious Kray twins to gather information for my reporting. Through my books and newspaper reporting, I provided the public with detailed accounts of some of the most shocking and notable crimes in British history, helping to shape public understanding of true crime and its perpetrators. I hope you enjoy my story. The city that gave birth to beat music and the Beatles, Liverpool, with just under 1 million people, a prominent seaport, but a scene of sin when it became the first major provincial city to report the existence of mobile brothels. These were large cars driven by ponces, in which prostitutes collected their customers, allowed them a quickie in the rear seat, and then moved along the street to attract other clients. There were also mobile prostitutes who drove small cars in pursuit of customers. After working Liverpool, they moved on to other large towns and cities. It was inevitable that, in a city where 2 out of 5 dwellings were slum property, where many families lived in near derelict houses, where floors were rotten with age and exposure to dampness, and where the walls of bedrooms were covered with fungi, children from these hovels would run wild in the streets and find a strange kind of security in each other's company. These youngsters of the immediate post-war era had no conscious hatred of authority or of the squalor in which they had been raised, but very quickly realized how easy it was to indulge in petty thieving simply by hunting in packs. In this manner, they picked up enough loot to make life much more bearable for themselves. As in the early days of the Glasgow gangs, poverty and idleness in Liverpool, coupled with the irrational human desire to wield power through brutality over others, led to the formation of groups of thugs. These social misfits, like their Glasgow counterparts, not only attacked rival gangs, but roamed the streets ready to beat up anyone just for the hell of it. But it was not long before the true criminal element emerged in the shape of young, smartly dressed men, equipped with brass knuckle dusters adorned with murderous spikes. They patrolled their districts with teenage hoodlums whose admiration for the American type of lawlessness was not concealed. Once again, the familiar protection racket made its appearance, with publicans and shopkeepers forced to pay £5 per week to ensure that the young hoods did not enter their premises to smash up furniture and fittings. And once again, the customary fear prevented most of the victims from complaining to the police. The weapons the thugs used were the familiar armory of all gangsters: Knives, koshes, hatchets, sharpened bicycle chains, and spiked iron bars or wooden staves with protruding nails. A professional thug was cheap to hire. His services could be obtained for 100 cigarettes or the equivalent in change, and none of them had the slightest qualms of conscience after hammering a perfect stranger into insensibility or even maiming him for life. Liverpool police officers knew that the only way to put down the ever-growing tide of violence was to adopt tougher methods, but unfortunately the force was undermanned. While officers patrolling in pairs could usually cope with most disturbances, a lone officer had to think twice before intervening in a gang battle, since the odds were always on the possibility of both gangs suddenly combining forces against him. The Liverpool mobs also had their queens, unkempt, amoral girls who provoked fights among the gangs, fought among themselves with fingernails and knives, and did as much wanton damage as their male counterparts. These female vandals, whose ages ranged from 14 to 22, were the despair of Liverpool probation officers. They were motivated by a love of notoriety, and they were completely beyond parental control, even if the parents wished to exercise such control. The male thugs were mostly teenagers of from 14 to 18, led by men who had managed to dodge war service. As the sun went down and the wartime blackout reigned, they left their warrens. When ships entered the port, they disgorged seamen hungry for entertainment. The city was also full of soldiers and airmen out for fun, and among these visitors, the gangs went to work. Servicemen were beaten up and robbed. They were lured into cars by girls employed by the gangs. Driven to some lonely spot, they found themselves surrounded by mobsters who viciously beat them up and then stole their wads of notes. The mobs defied the police, who in any case were overburdened by the demands of rescue services during air raids. At the end of the war, older criminals returned to the streets of a city that was torn by two religious factions, Catholics and Protestants, a city scarred in a million places by bombing and impoverished by mounting unemployment. The gangs gained new strength, and the crime rate spiraled. Liverpool became the roughest, toughest port in Britain, and owing to communist influence in the docks, one of the most strike-prone centres in the country. The fast-growing teddy boy cult in London swiftly spread to Liverpool, and more knife-happy youths were recruited to the gangs. Ordinary citizens were scared to walk at night in many of the city's poorer districts. From the compost heap of social outcasts grew the peddlers of vice on wheels. Gang leaders, using their fast cars as brothels, forced their girls to hand over 50 to 75% of their earnings at the end of each night. Other prostitutes, controlled and protected by the same leaders, were made to steer their clients into illicit drinking dens established in slum basements, where most of the customers were seamen willing to be overcharged for drinks after hours. The gangs controlled a small number of plushier places where the exorbitant prices charged included a strip show. These clip joints were haunted by drug pushers and usually had at least 2 rooms set aside for use as brothels. In the years 1945 to 1950, the thugs of Liverpool displayed a complete indifference to the value of property or indeed of human life itself. A A murder in 1949 did, however, drive some of the worst criminal elements underground for a time. One evening, a man and a girl, both products of Liverpool's slumland gangs, went into the Beehive Tavern just off Lime Street. The girl, Jackie Dixon, fair-haired and pretty in a rather hard way, but with a persistent cough that racked her slim frame, had been orphaned at the age of 13. After the death of her father, she had drifted in and out of numerous towns in the north of England, until finally she returned to the city of her birth to join up with the gangs and make her living as a prostitute in Dockland. One day, she met a gang leader in a public house, and he introduced her to the decoy racket. He explained that a smartly dressed girl could easily work the trains or the hotel bars, pick up a man, and suggest a ride. It was seldom that a man refused. Jackie was in the net. She never made much money, but like other girls, once she had been drawn into the racket, she was too scared to pull out. She knew well enough what to expect if she refused to go along with the gang. A broken bottle over her face or razor slashes from ear to ear. She had seen it happen to others. Her companion during her visit to the Beehive Tavern on the evening in question was Jimmy Northam, who had left school at the age of 13, and by the time he was 15, had discovered that a sucker stood out in a crowd as an Indian in a bunch of Chinamen. Northam joined a large Liverpool gang, which, during the war, worked over servicemen. Injuries Northam sustained during the war had given him a permanent stutter, and Stutty, as he was nicknamed, usually drove around the city in a flash car. At the end of the war, Jackie married a seaman but deserted him the day after the wedding. When Northam met her, she was ill. He took her to his home and was living with her at the time he received a summons to go with her to the Beehive Tavern. The summons came from George Kelly, a 26-years-old Irish labourer and gang leader who greeted the couple at the pub, accompanied by Charles Connolly, an unemployed railway porter turned criminal. Connolly had been to sea as a galley boy, and from August 1941 to 1946 served as an ordinary seaman in the Royal Navy. He had twice deserted and twice been punished, but he was tough, and after the war became an amateur boxer who strutted around the Lime Street area looking for a fight. On one occasion, in 1947, he strode into a dance hall and struck the doorman. For this incident, he was given the choice of paying a £5 fine or going to jail for a month. He paid the fine. Kelly informed Northam and Jackie Dixon that he had sent for them to do a job. Kelly had been an early starter in the world of crime. At the age of 10, he was discharged under the Probation Act for breaking into a school and stealing, and he was in trouble many times in the next few years. He joined the Royal Navy and deserted no fewer than 5 times. And in 1943, he was sentenced to 9 months' imprisonment at Manchester Assizes for assaulting a married woman. 2 years later, he was again jailed, this time for receiving stolen property, and in the same year, 1945, he was given 3 years penal servitude for desertion and a year's hard labor for 2 other offenses. Discharged from the Navy, he became successively a cafe doorman, a street hawker, and finally a barker for an escapologist. Kelly at last found that he could make easy money by organizing a stable of prostitutes and living on their earnings. Connolly, known as Sailor, was endowed with a minimum of intelligence. He was always on the fringe of criminal operations, a little man known in police and thieves' jargon as a mug. The strange quartet was joined by a young, heavily made-up woman, Marjorie Dawson, widely known among the criminal fraternity as Norwegian Marjorie. The party of five stood in a passageway by a serving hatch between the pub's two bars. They had a common complaint, a shortage of ready cash. Kelly initiated a discussion on the possibility of carrying out various jobs, and someone suggested that one of the girls should lure a taxi driver, who they knew to be a police informer, to a side street so that he could be beaten up and robbed. That idea was discarded, as was a suggestion that a certain shop should be screwed, and a further proposal that the four of them should rob a Funfair arcade in New Brighton. Then Connolly claimed that he had a smasher, a cinema in Wavertree called the Cameo, but he stressed that if they did this particular job, they would need to use a gun to frighten the manager into handing over the takings. Without hesitation, Kelly produced an automatic pistol. Marjorie Dawson was scared and told him to put it away in case it was seen by other people. Kelly scoffed and boasted, "I'm Kelly," and proceeded to load the gun with 6 rounds of ammunition. Kelly, a gang leader whose criminal record was peppered with failure, was vain enough to believe that in a brief conversation, the crude ingredients for a robbery could be fashioned into a large-scale criminal escapade. Although no real plan to grab the takings from the manager of the Cameo Cinema was really formulated, it was decided at that moment that the crime would be committed. Perhaps the only person present who possessed real misgivings was Norwegian Marjorie, who, shortly after the incident, took her life. It was Connolly who suggested that Kelly should wear a mask to avoid recognition. The boastful Kelly hadn't thought such an elementary precaution necessary, but he pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and discovered that it was too small to hide his face. Nervously, Marjorie took off a little dark apron she was wearing and silently handed it to Kelly, who turned to Northam and asked him for his dark brown overcoat to aid his disguise. Northam obediently handed it over, and Kelly decided there and then that he and Connolly would do the job. He tried that same evening to recruit for the raid another member of his gang, David Johnson, a window cleaner, but Johnson refused to join in because Kelly and Connolly were carrying a loaded gun. Northam, Jackie Dixon, Kelly, and Connolly arranged to meet the following day, March the 20th, in a public house at Brownlow Hill, Liverpool, and later, as Kelly and Connolly approached the Cameo Cinema, they stood in the shadow of a shop doorway where Kelly tied the little apron around the lower half of his face and pulled his Trilby hat well down over his forehead. He waited until about 9 p.m. when he saw the cashier extinguish the light at the cash desk. Connolly knew that once the cash desk closed, the money was taken up a flight of stairs to the manager's office. Leaving Connolly outside, Kelly entered the cinema and walked up a spiral staircase to the office. The manager, Mr. Leonard Thomas, alone at his desk with the money in front of him, was about to check the night's takings. Kelly opened the door and demanded the cash. Thomas turned around to look into the muzzle of Kelly's revolver. "Don't be a fool," he shouted, not unsteadily. "Put that thing away. You can't have the money. It belongs to the company. But you can have some of my money if you like." He then made a swift move and pushed aside the gun. Kelly fired, and Thomas fell. Kelly did not panic, but picked up the money, which was in a bag, and calmly replaced the gun in his pocket. Suddenly, a second man, Leonard Catterall, the assistant manager, appeared. He tried to grab the money bag from Kelly. Kelly hit him and then fired the gun at him. Catterall dropped to his knees, clawing at his shirt. As he began to roll over onto the floor, Kelly shot him twice more. It was then, when he realized the magnitude of his crime, that he panicked. He dropped the money and fled from the office, almost colliding with Patrick Griffin, the cinema fireman, who had heard the shots and had come to investigate. He obeyed Kelly's order to stand aside, but he managed to get a good view of that part of Kelly's face that was visible. He also had a clear picture of how the gunman was dressed. Griffin ran for help for the two dying men, and Kelly disappeared. Kelly made no attempt to locate Connolly. In any case, Connolly had long since vanished. He had bolted after hearing the first shot. As Kelly hugged the shadows, he began to plan an alibi, and his run became a walk. He entered the Lee Arms, a public house in which he was well known, and so keen was he to make people aware of his presence that he bought a drink for James Curry, a man he hardly knew. This small generosity proved to be a mistake, because not only was the man surprised that Kelly should buy him a drink, but he noticed that the normally self-assured gang leader was rather unsteady on his feet, a little breathless and agitated. Curry was curious, and he asked Kelly if he had been in a fight. Kelly was quick to reply that he had indeed been involved in a brush with someone. Connolly, too, was busy establishing an alibi. He was more shaken by the events of the evening than Kelly, the killer, but by the time he joined his wife and two sisters at a dance hall, he had managed to calm himself. The following day, Kelly had recovered his composure sufficiently to keep a rendezvous at the public house in Brownlow Hill with Stutty Northam and Jackie Dixon. He entered the bar with Connolly, who had spent a sleepless night, and who, it was obvious to Northam and Dixon, was a very frightened man. Connolly announced that he was going to leave the country. Kelly wheeled on him and condemned him as a yellow bastard. He then threatened Northam and Dixon, saying that if they talked, he or his brothers would get them. 2 or 3 days after the shooting, Jackie Dixon again saw Kelly, who appeared to have plenty of money. When she commented on it, he said he would have had more if he had managed to get away with the cameo cash. Northam and Jackie Dixon were worried by the double murder. They didn't mind conventional theft or beating up men decoyed by street girls, but they were loath to become involved in killing. On April the 19th, exactly 1 month after the murders, Philip Northam and Jackie Dixon spent many hours cogitating and decided to write an anonymous letter to the police. Helped by Jackie, Northam printed the following in disguised capitals: "This letter is not a crank letter or such like, nor am I turning informer for gain. I know 3 men and a girl, not including myself, who heard about this plan for robbery. I would have nothing to do with it, and I don't think the girl did. When I met her on Sunday, she had not been out with them. Another man dropped out on account he wanted to unload the revolver before they went." He was referring to Donald Johnson. There was only 2 men went. The man he took with him lost his nerve and would not go in with him, but said he would wait outside, but did not. The letter went on to state that they, Northam and Jackie Dixon, could give details about the murder if the police would insert an advertisement in a newspaper, promising that they would not be charged with the crime. While Northam and Dixon had been debating the move, Liverpool police had been far from inactive. The then head of the CID, Detective Chief Superintendent Tom Smith, had spent a lot of time with the cinema fireman Patrick Griffin, who stuck to his original description of the gunman, particularly his very dark, prominent eyebrows. Smith was a first-class detective, well acquainted with all the city's gang leaders and minor villains. He sent for Detective Chief Inspector Herbert Balmer, who later became Liverpool's Assistant Chief Constable, and throughout the night following the double murder, the two officers spent hours checking the records of local criminals until they reached Kelly's file. His dark eyebrows were the startling feature of the picture attached to his records. If anything, Balmer knew Kelly better than Smith, because for several years he had been attached to the division in which Kelly lived and had encountered him many times. On Sunday, March 20th, they interviewed Kelly. He produced his alibi, and because he appeared to have satisfactorily accounted for his whereabouts at the vital time of the murder, he was not detained. The woman with whom he was living, Doris O'Malley, swore that Kelly was with her at a public house called the Coach and Horses before he went to the Lee Arms. When the police read the anonymous letter, they inserted an advertisement in the personal column of the Liverpool Echo, but there was no response from Northam or Dixon. They had become scared and had fled to Manchester. The police continued their search, and they interviewed some 2,000 men and women. Eventually, they picked up an underworld whisper that Jackie Dixon had been involved in the shootings, and a dragnet for her was spread over the entire north of England. She was found in Manchester, and she admitted that she had helped to write the anonymous letter. The police also captured Northam, but it was not until September 29th that he admitted Kelly and Connolly were the men the police wanted. Connolly was arrested by Chief Inspector Balmer, and Kelly was picked up in the street the same day. Kelly was full of denials. "I never had a gun in my life. I don't know how to handle or fire one, and I don't know Charles Connolly. I have never seen him in my life, and I have never seen the other people you mention." Connolly, in turn, denied knowing Kelly and said he had never heard of the Cameo Cinema and had certainly never been anywhere near it. They were committed for trial at Liverpool Assizes, and while in Walton Jail, Kelly and Connolly made the mistake of discussing the case with Robert Graham, a man serving a 6-month sentence for receiving stolen property. In the exercise yard one day, Connolly told Graham that he had had nothing to do with the Cameo Cinema murders, apart from the fact that he went to the cinema with the man who had committed them. Connolly told him he had become frightened and had run away after hearing the shots. When Kelly talked to Graham of the double murder, he said, "I have about 60 witnesses from the Lee Arms, and 16 of them have never been in trouble before." He added that the police believed the shooting had taken place at 9:40 p.m. At 9:45 p.m., Kelly said he was having a drink in the Lee Arms. "My life hangs on that 5 minutes," he told Graham. At the trial in January 1950, before Mr. Justice Oliver, Kelly and Connolly pleaded not guilty, but Stutty Northam and Jackie Dixon both gave evidence about the planning of the cinema raid, and Graham repeated his conversations with Kelly and Connolly. All 3 witnesses were frightened because they feared revenge from members of Kelly's gang. Northam and Dixon even refused to write their names and addresses on a piece of paper for the judge because they were both working and living under assumed names. Justification for the couple's fears came when Graham told the court that Kelly had told him in jail that Northam and Dixon were the only witnesses who could be called to give evidence against him. But he was certain they would not talk because his relatives would get them. It was that which shattered Connolly's alibi. He protested his innocence and said that on the day of the murder, he arrived in Liverpool at about 5 p.m., having previously arranged to go to a dance hall. He reached the hall at about 8:20 p.m. using a free ticket, and his wife arrived about 20 minutes later. He said that at about 9:30 p.m. he had entered a rumba competition. His wife, two of his sisters, and their friends all stated that Connolly was at the dance before the time the murders were committed. But a vital piece of evidence came from the master of ceremonies. He told the court he was sure that Connolly did not arrive at the hall until about 10:20 p.m., after the pubs had closed. He said that he remembered him well because Connolly had worn his hat on the dance floor and he had been asked to remove it. The trial lasted 13 days, at that time longer than any other previous trial in an English criminal court, but the jury failed to agree. They were asked to retire again, but failing to agree after a further 4 hours, they were discharged. Kelly and Connolly faced a second trial a week later. This time they were tried separately, and Kelly was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to be hanged. The judge, Mr. Justice Castles, in his summing up, commented upon Northam's and Jackie Dixon's fear of revenge. That was why they had waited until September 1st, 6 months after the shooting, before talking. Connolly was acquitted of murder. It was agreed that he never entered the cinema and did not fire a gun at any stage. At his second trial, he decided to plead guilty to armed robbery and was jailed for 10 years. Graham was freed from prison for coming forward as a witness. He received a number of threatening letters and left the area to live in Cumberland under another name. Threats were also made against Northam and Dixon, and for some time, they were given police protection. Kelly's appeal against his sentence was rejected. Leave to appeal to the House of Lords was refused. On March 28, 1950, he died on the scaffold at Walton Prison. Kelly's gang had sworn revenge if he hanged. But on the day he died, his hoodlums, experts in terrorizing the women of the streets, merely raised their glasses to the dead man in a pub on Merseyside. That's all for this episode, my friends. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly, moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section.